It was an
Hello, my
ordinary
dear.
morning
You
in the
look lovely
Patel
today.
household,
Thank you. I
with the
feel
sun
happy.
spilling
I'm so
golden
glad.
light
What
through
shall
the
we do
tall
today?
windows
Read
of
a
the living
story?
room. The house was large but cozy, filled with the quiet hum of daily life. The father, Mr. Patel, was a man known to everyone in the neighborhood as polite and caring, always smiling at neighbors and nodding to the children playing outside. From the outside, the family seemed perfect. A model household where everything ran smoothly. Inside, the day began like any other, with the maid quietly moving through the rooms, tidying up, making the beds, and arranging the breakfast table. Her name was Sita, and she had worked for the family for many years, knowing the rhythms of the household better than anyone. Sita had a kind heart and always treated the child, little Arif, with warmth and care, noticing even the smallest things that might upset him. On this particular morning, Arif sat at the breakfast table, swinging his legs nervously, his tiny fingers fiddled with the spoon as he avoided eye contact with his father. Mr. Patel poured the milk into Arif's bowl with a smile. "Good morning, Arif, eat well," he said in his usual gentle tone, but there was something in his eyes that Sita noticed, a flicker of impatience hidden beneath the calm exterior. Something about the way he watched Arif, the way Arif flinched at his voice, made her pause for a moment. Sita had learned over the years to notice subtle changes, small gestures that could mean a lot. Arif was normally cheerful, always talking about his little adventures in the garden or the stories he had imagined, but this morning, he was unusually quiet, whispering his responses or sometimes not speaking at all. The air felt slightly tense, though nothing obvious was happening. Sita couldn't quite explain why her stomach churned with unease, yet she tried to dismiss it, telling herself maybe Arif was just sleepy or worried about school. The household carried on, the father reading the newspaper, the mother humming in the kitchen as she prepared tea. Everything seemed normal, yet Sita's instincts told her something was different. There were small signs she could not ignore. Arif flinching when his father raised his hand slightly, a shadow passing across the child's face when certain words were said, a tiny bruise on the arm, almost hidden under his sleeve. Subtle enough that most people would not notice, but Sita saw it. Her heart tightened, but she kept her calm, moving silently to set the table and prepare breakfast. Sita had always loved working for this family. They had treated her well, and she considered them like her own extended family, but today, something felt off, as if a small, invisible thread had been pulled too tight. She could sense tension in the house that no one else seemed to notice. It was the kind of feeling that makes your hands tremble slightly, and your mind race, wondering if it was just your imagination or if something was really wrong. As Arif ate, Sita watched closely, making sure he had everything he needed. She offered him his favorite toast with honey, trying to coax a smile from him. He managed a small, weak smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sita noticed how he kept looking toward his father, almost as if he feared displeasing him. The father smiled and ruffled Arif's hair. "Eat slowly, it won't hurt," he said in a voice that was meant to comfort. Yet something in it made Sita freeze for a fraction of a second. There was a subtle edge, a hidden tension, a slight coldness in his words that didn't match the warmth of his smile. Sita's mind started connecting dots she hadn't noticed before, little moments over the past few weeks that had seemed trivial. Arif avoiding certain rooms, quiet tears wiped away quickly, hurried explanations for bruises or scratches, the child's voice faltering when talking about home. Sita's instincts told her that these were not accidents, that something beneath the surface of this seemingly normal family life was troubling and dangerous. She continued her work, folding laundry, arranging utensils, but her thoughts were with Arif. She decided to keep a close eye, quietly watching for anything unusual, trying to balance her duties and her growing concern. Sita knew that children were delicate, and even a small incident could affect them deeply. She promised herself to be vigilant, to notice things others might overlook, because she cared deeply about the child's safety. The morning wore on, the light shifting through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Everything seemed calm, but Sita's mind remained alert. Every gesture, every word, every glance seemed significant now. She sensed that this day might be different, that the ordinary rhythm of the household could change forever, and she would have to be ready for whatever might come. The morning carried on, but a quiet unease settled over the house. Arif sat at the breakfast table, pushing his toast around his plate, his small fingers trembling slightly as he tried to appear calm. Sita watched him carefully, noticing the tiny signs that something was wrong. Today was different. She could feel it in the air, a tension that seemed to coil around the walls of the house, wrapping everyone in a subtle, almost invisible grip. Mr. Patel walked over to Arav and crouched slightly to speak to him at eye level. "Daddy said it wouldn't hurt," he said softly, his voice calm, yet carrying an unspoken authority. The words sounded harmless, even comforting, but Sita's heart sank. She saw the slight flinch in Arav, the way his small hands gripped the edge of the table, the way his eyes darted to the floor as if searching for a hiding place. There was fear there, barely visible, but unmistakable to someone who knew how to look. Sita's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the moment. Could it really be nothing, or was there something deeper hiding beneath the surface? She had noticed little things over the past weeks, and now they seemed to align like pieces of a puzzle. Small bruises on Arav's arms, sudden quietness, the way he avoided certain rooms, all of it came together in an instant, and Sita's stomach tightened with worry. After breakfast, Arav slowly got up and went to his room, trying to appear normal. Sita followed discreetly, pretending to straighten the bed covers. She watched as he carefully placed his school bag down, his movements stiff and cautious. It was clear he was afraid of being noticed, of being questioned. Sita felt a surge of protectiveness. She wanted to scoop him up and promise that everything would be okay. But she knew she had to stay calm and watch closely. The father, Mr. Patel, moved to the study, and Sita could see the faint tension in his posture. His calm smile didn't quite reach his eyes. There was something hidden behind it, something he didn't want anyone to see. Sita quietly made a mental note of it, knowing that every gesture and glance could reveal more than words ever would. Moments later, Arav returned to the living room, carrying a small notebook he had brought from school. He tried to sit normally, but his shoulders were tight, and his eyes flicked nervously toward his father. Mr. Patel glanced at the notebook and nodded. "Good job, Arav, very smart," he said, but there was a strange edge to the praise, a sense that it was conditional, as if approval could be taken away in an instant. Sita felt a chill run down her spine, realizing that the child's world was carefully measured, where one wrong move could lead to disappointment or worse. Sita decided she had to watch more closely. She moved around the house under the guise of cleaning, but her eyes never left Arav. She noticed how he flinched slightly when his father touched his shoulder, how he avoided direct eye contact, and how he bit his lip as if trying to hold back tears. It was subtle, almost invisible, but Sita could see it, and it worried her deeply. Later, when Arav went to play quietly in the corner, Sita approached him gently, crouching down to his level. "Are you okay, Arav?" she asked softly, her voice warm and soothing. He hesitated, then whispered, "Daddy said it wouldn't hurt, but it did." His small voice trembled, and Sita felt her heart break. She realized that what she had feared was real, that the innocent words of a parent were hiding pain that no child should ever endure. Sita's mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. She couldn't let this continue, but she had to be careful. Every step had to be calculated, every action measured. She decided to gather evidence quietly, to watch and document what she saw. She needed proof before anyone could act. But most of all, she wanted to protect Arav, to make sure he was safe from further harm. By the end of the morning, the atmosphere in the house had shifted completely. What once seemed normal now carried a dark, heavy weight. Sita realized that this day marked a turning point, that from this moment onward, she had a responsibility, not just as a maid, but as someone who could change the outcome of a child's life. The tension was thick, but Sita was determined. Her eyes never left Arav, and her mind never stopped thinking about the next steps she would need to take. Days passed, but Sita couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled over the house. Every morning, Arav would move quietly through the rooms, his small steps careful, almost cautious, as if he was trying not to draw attention. Sita noticed the way he held his arms close to his body, hiding small marks and bruises under long sleeves. Even when he smiled, it felt forced, a tiny mask hiding fear. The maid's instincts, sharp from years of experience, told her that something deeper was going on, something that had been quietly happening for a long time. At first, she tried to convince herself that it might be nothing, that children sometimes got bruises while playing, that moods could be unpredictable, but the little signs kept adding up, and Sita began to see patterns, small inconsistencies that could not be ignored. She noticed how Arav flinched when his father's hand moved too quickly, how he shrank back at sudden movements, and how he avoided certain rooms or toys that should have been comforting. The child's hesitations and whispers were pieces of a puzzle that told a story Sita had only begun to understand. Sita also started paying attention to the father's behavior more closely. Mr. Patel was polite, composed, and outwardly kind, but there were moments when his voice took on a sharper tone, a quiet command that seemed to frighten Arav. She remembered the day he had said, "Daddy said it wouldn't hurt," and how Arav's small body had tensed immediately. That single sentence now replayed in her mind like a warning, a small clue to a larger, hidden truth. Every day, Sita made small observations, pretending they were casual, unnoticed by anyone else. She checked Arav's arms for marks, asked him about small bumps and scratches, and listened carefully to what he said and didn't say. Sometimes, Arav would hesitate, then quietly whisper explanations that didn't make sense, words that hinted at fear and discomfort, but never fully explained. Sita felt her heart ache as she realized the child was trying to hide something he didn't understand. Something he shouldn't have to hide at all. The maid also began noticing subtle changes in the house itself. Small signs of tension hung in the air, objects slightly out of place, cupboards left open as if in a hurry. A quiet sense of urgency seemed to follow Mr. Patel. Though outwardly everything looked normal, Sita began to suspect that the household's calm, polite appearance was just a mask, a carefully crafted image hiding something darker underneath. One afternoon, while arranging toys in the living room, Sita noticed Arav sitting on the floor, hugging his knees, staring at the wall. His eyes were distant, almost lost in thought. She knelt beside him gently. "Arav, is something wrong?" she asked, keeping her voice soft and comforting. He shook his head, then whispered, "I don't want Daddy to be angry." His small voice trembled, and Sita felt a wave of sorrow. The words were simple, but they revealed fear that no child should ever feel. Toward a parent, she realized that the child's safety depended on someone noticing, someone taking action. Sita decided to keep a closer record, noting every small bruise, every hesitation, every fearful glance. She began mentally piecing together what had happened over the past weeks, trying to make sense of it. Each observation made her more certain that Arav was being hurt, though the exact nature and extent remained unclear. The growing suspicion in her mind transformed into a quiet determination. A resolve to uncover the truth without alerting the father. By evening, Sita could no longer ignore what she had seen. Her concern had grown into something heavier, something urgent. She moved quietly through the house, watching, listening, waiting for the next signs. Every detail mattered, every gesture, every word could reveal more. The tension in the house thickened like a storm cloud, but Sita was ready to face it, for the sake of Arav. She promised herself silently that she would not let fear stop her, that she would do whatever it took to protect the child. The day ended with Sita standing silently in the hallway, watching Arav play quietly with his toys. Her mind replayed the small moments, the tiny signs of fear, and she knew in her heart that she was on the edge of a discovery that could change everything. Something was happening behind the calm, polite facade of the household, and Sita was determined to uncover it. She was ready to face the truth, no matter how shocking it might be. Sita's suspicion had grown over the days, but that afternoon, everything changed. It started when she noticed Arav moving unusually quietly toward the study, a room usually off-limits to him. She followed him discreetly, pretending to check the shelves nearby. Her heart beat faster with every step he took, sensing that something was about to be revealed. Arav paused near the corner of the room, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Then, almost as if drawn by instinct, he lifted a small piece of cloth from under the desk. Sita's eyes widened as she saw what it was, a faint smear of blood on the fabric, barely noticeable but enough to send a shock through her chest. She could not believe her eyes, and yet every instinct screamed that this was real, that the child had been hurt, and that it was far more serious than she had imagined. For a moment, Sita froze, unsure how to react, but then she noticed something even more alarming. Arav's small fingers were trembling, and his eyes were wide with fear. He looked as if he had been hiding something for a long time, as if he had carried a secret that weighed heavily on his young shoulders. Sita's mind raced, connecting the dots, the flinches, the quiet tears, the whispered words. All of it now made sense. Gathering her courage, Sita knelt beside Arav, her voice calm but firm. "Arav, what happened?" she asked softly, trying to hide the panic in her own heart. The child hesitated, then whispered in a voice so quiet that only she could hear, "Daddy said it wouldn't hurt." But it did. His words cut through her like a knife, and Sita felt a wave of anger and sorrow crash over her. She knew then that the father's calm words had masked something cruel, something that no child should ever endure. Sita's eyes scanned the room quickly, noticing the small signs she had missed before. A few items on the floor seemed out of place, almost as if someone had tried to hide evidence. A faint bruise on Ariv's arm peeked from under his sleeve, and a small tear in his shirt looked suspiciously deliberate. Every detail confirmed her worst fears, that the child had been physically harmed, and that this was not an accident. Her mind moved quickly, calculating the next steps. She had to protect Ariv, but she also needed proof to ensure that action could be taken. She gently took Ariv's hand and led him to a safer spot in the house, speaking soothingly, "It's okay, Ariv, I'm here now, you're safe." The child clung to her, relief and fear mingling in his eyes. Sita felt a surge of determination, knowing she could not let this moment pass without acting. Sita decided to quietly document what she saw, noting every bruise, every tear in his clothing, every word Ariv whispered. She used her phone carefully, making sure not to draw attention. Her hands shook, but her mind was sharp and focused. She knew that gathering evidence was essential, that without it, the danger could continue, and Ariv could be at risk again. By late afternoon, Sita had collected enough signs to confirm her suspicion. It was undeniable, something serious had been happening, and it required immediate attention. She realized that the calm, polite image of the household had been a mask, hiding a reality of fear and harm. The discovery weighed heavily on her, but it also strengthened her resolve. She could not allow the child to continue suffering. Finally, Sita took a deep breath, her mind clear, and her heart determined. She knew she had to act. There was no more time for hesitation. The child's safety depended on her courage and swift action. She promised herself that she would not fail Ariv, that she would uncover the full truth and ensure he was protected. The house that once seemed ordinary was now a place of secrets, and Sita was ready to expose them, no matter how shocking the revelation might be. Sita sat quietly in the living room, her mind racing. The house was calm, almost eerily so, but the tension inside her chest was unbearable. She had discovered the truth about Ariv's suffering, yet she was caught in a storm of conflicting emotions. Fear, anger, and responsibility swirled together, making it difficult to think clearly. She knew she had to act, but the thought of confronting the father directly filled her with dread. She replayed the morning over and over in her mind, remembering the small gestures, the hidden bruises, and the whispered words of the child. "Daddy said it wouldn't hurt." But it did. The words echoed in her head like a warning bell, reminding her that time was critical. Sita understood that confronting Mr. Patel could be dangerous, that a wrong move might make things worse for Ariv. She had to be cautious, deliberate, and clever. Sita paced quietly, weighing her options. One part of her wanted to march straight to Mr. Patel, demand answers, and expose him immediately, yet another part feared the consequences, the anger, the denial, the possibility that Ariv could face even more danger if the father realized someone new. She felt trapped between the need to act and the need to protect, a balancing act that made her stomach twist in knots. She glanced at Ariv, who was sitting quietly on the sofa, hugging his knees. His eyes were wide and anxious, watching her every move. Sita felt a surge of protective instinct, knowing that the child's safety depended on her. She leaned down and whispered, "Don't worry, Ariv, I will make sure nothing happens to you." His small hand clutched hers, trembling, and Sita felt a resolve harden inside her. There was no turning back. She had to confront this, but on her own terms. Sita decided to observe the father first, to gather more clues before making any move. She watched as Mr. Patel moved through the house, polite, composed, and unaware that Sita had seen everything. The contrast between his calm demeanor and the fear she had witnessed in Ariv made her blood run cold. She realized how carefully he maintained the facade, how skillfully he hid his actions behind a mask of normalcy. As the day progressed, Sita noticed more subtle signs, small moments that revealed cracks in the mask. The father's hand lingered too long when correcting Ariv's mistakes, a sharp word masked as guidance, a sudden scowl when the child hesitated, and then the quick, polite smile when she or anyone else walked in. Every gesture confirmed her suspicion that the harm had been deliberate, that it was not an accident or a misunderstanding. Sita took a deep breath and began preparing herself. She knew that confrontation didn't have to be loud or dramatic, it had to be precise and deliberate. Her plan was to act with caution, to protect Ariv while revealing the truth. She would observe, document, and wait for the right moment to involve someone who could intervene safely. She understood that courage wasn't always about shouting or fighting. Sometimes it was quiet, calculated, and unwavering. That evening, as the house settled into a false calm, Sita felt the weight of the moment. She had crossed a line from suspicion into certainty, and now she had to decide her next steps. Her mind raced with possibilities, imagining outcomes, risks, and consequences. But one thing was clear: she could no longer stand idle. The child's trust, the responsibility she felt, and the evidence she had discovered demanded action. For the first time, Sita allowed herself to feel the full weight of her bravery. She was scared, yes, but determination replaced hesitation. She understood that confrontation wasn't just about facing the father, it was about protecting Arav, ensuring his safety, and bringing the truth to light. In that quiet living room, she promised herself that no matter what happened next, she would not fail the child. She would see this through, step by careful step, until justice and safety prevailed. Sita could no longer wait. The evidence, the fear in Arav's eyes, the hidden bruises, it all demanded immediate action. She knew that hesitation could cost the child his safety. Her mind was sharp, focused, every thought aligned with one goal: protect Arav. She took a deep breath, steadying her racing heart, and made the decision to act. She waited until the father had stepped into the study, absorbed in paperwork, giving her a small window of privacy. Quietly, she guided Arav into the kitchen, away from any prying eyes. "We need to be careful, Arav, but I promise you will be safe," she whispered, her voice firm but soothing. The child nodded, clutching her hand tightly, trust and fear mingling in his small eyes. Sita's first step was to document everything clearly. She had already noticed the marks and bruises. Now she photographed them carefully, making sure the images were visible but discreet. Every tear in his clothing, every smudge of dirt from trying to hide injuries, she recorded. Her hands shook slightly, but she focused, knowing that these records could be critical when authorities got involved. Next, she called a trusted friend who worked closely with Child Protection Services, speaking in hushed tones, explaining the situation without revealing too much to anyone who might overhear. The friend listened carefully, asking questions that guided Sita to clarify the timeline, the locations, the subtle signs she had noticed over weeks. Finally, the friend confirmed that immediate intervention was required, and that the police and child protection officers could respond. Sita's heart pounded with a mixture of relief and anxiety, knowing the next hours would be crucial. While waiting for help to arrive, Sita made sure Arav felt safe. She sat with him in the living room, letting him play quietly with his toys, offering gentle words, and reassuring touches. "You're brave, Arav, and we're going to make sure everything is okay now," she said softly. Her calm presence was a shield against the fear he had carried for so long. The child's trembling slowly eased, though small shadows of anxiety still lingered in his eyes. The minutes stretched like hours as she heard the faint sound of sirens in the distance, approaching steadily. Sita's mind raced with plans, imagining possible reactions from Mr. Patel. She stayed alert, making sure Arav was never alone, keeping him close, whispering words of reassurance while scanning the house for any signs that her actions had been noticed. When the police arrived, Sita explained everything carefully, showing them the photographs, describing the injuries, and recounting the subtle but telling behaviors she had observed over days. The officers listened intently, taking notes and asking questions to clarify every detail. Sita felt a wave of relief as they nodded, understanding the urgency. She knew that now, finally, professional intervention would secure Arav's safety. Sita also gave a quiet warning to the officers about how the father might react, detailing the controlled facade he maintained. The authorities nodded, taking her observations seriously. The tension in the house was palpable, but Sita stayed calm, her focus entirely on ensuring the child remained safe. She moved with quiet confidence, every step deliberate, knowing that her vigilance had brought them to this moment. Finally, the officers gently guided Arav to a safer location, reassuring him that he would be protected. Sita watched as he took their hands, a mixture of relief and lingering fear on his face. She felt a quiet sense of triumph and hope, knowing that the immediate danger had passed, though the process of recovery and justice would continue. As the officers spoke with Mr. Patel, Sita remained close to Arav, holding his hand, whispering comforting words. The house, once filled with subtle tension and hidden fear, now felt lighter, though the memory of weeks of hidden suffering lingered. Sita knew that her courage, careful observation, and decisive action had made all the difference. She had acted when it mattered most, ensuring that a child in danger was finally safe. The sound of the police knocking at the front door echoed through the house, sharp and deliberate. Mr. Patel looked up from his papers, startled, his carefully maintained calm flickering for just a moment. Sita stayed close to Arif, her hand resting gently on his small shoulder, ready to protect him. The officers entered quickly but calmly, their presence commanding attention without creating panic. Sita's heart pounded, knowing that every second now mattered. The lead officer, a woman with a calm but firm voice, asked Mr. Patel to step aside, while another officer gently guided Arif and Sita into the living room, away from any confrontation. Sita stayed by Arif's side, whispering reassurance. "It's okay, Arif, you're safe now." The child clung to her, his small body trembling, yet a flicker of relief shone in his eyes, as if he finally sensed that help had arrived. The officers began asking questions, speaking softly so as not to alarm Arif, but clearly enough that Mr. Patel could hear. They inquired about injuries, behaviors, and daily routines, carefully observing the father's reactions. Sita provided detailed accounts, showing the photographs she had taken, recounting the bruises, the marks, and the patterns she had noticed over weeks. Her voice was steady, her eyes unwavering, and every word carried the weight of truth. Mr. Patel's composed facade began to crack as the officers asked pointed questions. His answers were measured, sometimes hesitant, revealing small inconsistencies that the trained officers immediately noticed. Sita watched closely, noting the subtle signs, the twitch of a hand, the tightness in his jaw, and the flicker of panic in his eyes. Every detail confirmed what she had feared, yet her focus remained on Arif, ensuring the child felt secure. The officers then gently asked Arif to show them where he felt hurt or afraid. They guided him calmly, speaking words of encouragement. "It's okay to tell us, we're here to help." Sita knelt beside him, holding his hand and nodding reassuringly. The child pointed quietly to small areas on his arms and legs, his voice barely above a whisper, but enough to communicate the truth. The officers documented everything meticulously, taking notes and making observations that would be crucial for the investigation. As the process continued, Sita noticed the relief slowly spreading across Arif's face. Though fear still lingered, he was speaking more openly now, trusting that the adults in the room were there to protect him, not punish him. Sita's heart swelled with a mixture of hope and sorrow, knowing that weeks of hidden suffering were finally being addressed. She gently reminded him, "You're brave, Arif, and everything is going to be okay now." Meanwhile, the officers secured the home, carefully ensuring that no further harm could come to the child. While they completed their investigation, they explained to Mr. Patel the serious nature of the allegations, and the legal steps that would follow. The father's attempts at calm composure faltered under the weight of scrutiny, revealing the truth that Sita had discovered long ago. Sita remained a constant presence for Arif, her eyes scanning the room to ensure he was not overwhelmed. She guided him to a small table with toys and books, giving him space to feel safe while the authorities worked. Her calm determination helped anchor the child, transforming fear into a fragile sense of security. The house, once filled with invisible tension and hidden danger, now carried an air of cautious relief. By the time the officers concluded their initial intervention, Sita had seen the first signs of change in Arif. His breathing was steadier, his small body less tense, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed a faint, genuine smile to cross his face. Sita felt a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction, knowing that her vigilance, courage, and decisive action had led to this moment. She had protected the child, uncovered the truth, and ensured that help was finally in place. As the police prepared to take further steps, including arranging safe care for Arif and initiating legal procedures, Sita stayed close, whispering comforting words. Her role as protector had been fulfilled, at least for now. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and the possibility of danger, and emerged with the child safe. Her heart was heavy with the weight of the past, but lightened by the promise of safety and justice. The house was quiet now, but the air felt different, lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled a long-held secret. Sita sat beside Arif on the sofa, gently brushing his hair back from his forehead. Her heart still raced from the whirlwind of events, yet a sense of calm began to settle over her. She glanced around the living room, noting the absence of tension, the faint echo of footsteps that no longer carried fear, and she realized that the immediate danger was over. Arif's small hands clutched hers, and for the first time in weeks, he looked at her without hesitation. His eyes were wide, still carrying traces of fear, but also a flicker of trust and relief. Sita whispered, "Everything is going to be okay now, Arif, you're safe." His lips curved into a tiny smile, shy but real, and Sita felt a wave of hope wash over her, knowing that her actions had created a space where the child could finally breathe without fear. The authorities had ensured that Arif would be placed in a safe environment, away from harm, for as long as needed. Sita had given them detailed accounts of everything she had observed, every bruise, every flinch, every whispered word that had hinted at pain. Her careful vigilance and bravery had been the key that opened the door to the child's safety, and she felt a quiet pride in the knowledge that she had done everything she could. As the day turned into evening, Sita walked through the house one last time, her steps slow, almost reverent. Each room held memories of hidden tension, moments she would never forget: the living room where Arif had flinched at his father's words, the kitchen where she had quietly guided him away from harm, the hallway where her heart had raced with fear and determination. All of it was now transformed in her mind, from places of quiet dread to spaces where courage had triumphed. She thought about the father, Mr. Patel, and the mask he had maintained for so long, the polite, composed image that hid cruelty and fear. Sita shivered as she recalled the subtle signs she had noticed over the weeks, and she realized how important it was to trust instincts, to observe carefully, and to act decisively when something felt wrong. Her experience had taught her that appearances could be deceiving, and that bravery sometimes meant stepping forward when the world seemed calm, but danger lurked beneath the surface. Arif finally settled, resting his head against her shoulder, and Sita stroked his hair gently, thinking about the resilience of children, how small gestures of care could bring comfort after weeks of fear. She reflected on her own journey, the fear, the moral conflict, and the decisive action she had taken. Sita realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward despite it, to protect the vulnerable when no one else would. The quiet evening stretched on, and Sita allowed herself to breathe deeply for the first time in days. She knew the road ahead for Arif would involve healing, both physically and emotionally, but she also knew that the worst was over. The child had survived, and her vigilance had ensured that justice and protection were in motion. She felt a mix of relief and solemn responsibility, understanding that the fight to protect the innocent was ongoing, but that one victory could change a life forever. As she glanced once more at Arif, who was finally relaxing, perhaps even dreaming, Sita smiled softly, her heart heavy yet full. She thought about the lessons she had learned, about noticing the smallest details, trusting her instincts, and never underestimating the power of courage and compassion. The house, once a place of hidden fear, had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest situations, one person's vigilance and bravery could make all the difference. Sita finally stood, her hand leaving Arif's, but her eyes never straying far from him. She knew that while the immediate danger had passed, her responsibility to protect, observe, and care remained. But for now, the child was safe. The story that had begun with hidden fear and quiet flinches had ended with action, courage, and relief, and Sita allowed herself a quiet moment to reflect, to understand the weight of what had happened, and to feel the profound satisfaction of having protected a life. In that quiet home, Sita realized the truth she had known all along. Sometimes, it took one brave soul to uncover the hidden, to confront fear, and to ensure that innocence was never lost. The day's events would remain etched in her memory forever, a testament to the power of vigilance, courage, and unwavering care. And as the night settled over the house, she knew that for Arif, at least, tomorrow would be safer, brighter, and full of hope.